Hi, and welcome back. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. We will be covering the direct capitalization method of investments. I am your host, Brian Shakarami, and let's get started. So in our previous videos, we discussed a combination of net present value and internal rate of return for evaluating commercial investments. So there is a second method of evaluating financial investments using direct capitalization method or cap rates. In my opinion, a quick and dirty method of evaluating commercial real estate investments. So how do you evaluate your commercial investment through cap rate? How do you determine the investment value through that cap rate? And how do you project future sales using that cap rate? We'll cover what the plus and minuses of the cap rate or direct capitalization method is, and what the relationship between the cap rate and the IRR or rate of return on your investment is. So as you may know, commercial properties are evaluated basically through their net operating income or NOI. So the direct capitalization method is basically a method of valuing your property through the NOI and the market capitalization rate or the cap rate. And this net operating income, it's always a future net operating income, meaning if you're buying it today, you are considering next year's net operating income. So that would be the net operating income of the first year, and that is NOI of year one. In a nutshell, a cap rate is the rate an investor will pay for $1 of net operating income. So if an investor knows what percentage, what rate they're willing to pay for each dollar of operating income, then all they have to do is take the net operating income of that first year and divide it by that rate, and lo and behold, you will have the purchase price. Let's do a few examples to get a better understanding of this concept. Trump Enterprises is looking to purchase a property. The NOI of the first year is $250,000, and Donald, being our president, will not consider any cap rate below 6%. So what would be the maximum price that Mr. Trump would pay for this property? Easy enough. We've been given the NOI of year one and we have the cap rate. All we have to do is divide that NOI by the cap rate and we come up with the purchase price of $4,166,667. Notice that this is a ratio. So the lower that cap rate is, or that percentage is, the higher the price. Conversely, the higher the cap rate, the lower the price. Example 2. Mr. Trump is looking to purchase a property. The acquisition price is $12 million and the projected first year NOI is $900,000. What is his cap rate or capitalization rate? Easy enough. The cap rate is the ratio of the first year's NOI and the purchase price, that being $250,000 and $12 million, which would give us a cap rate of 7.5%. Notice, the higher the NOI, the higher the cap rate. And conversely, the lower the NOI, the lower the cap rate. It's a ratio. Cap rate can be used to find the future sales price of a commercial holding. How do you use that direct capitalization method? Easy enough. Just like we determine the first year of NOI divided by the cap rate to come up with the purchase price when we were initially purchasing, for a sales price, let's say the sales happens 5 years from now, you'd have to project the net operating income for the first year after the sale, which would mean that the net operating income of year 6 divided by the disposition cap rate or whatever the capitalization rate is at the time of sale. Let's do an example to have a better understanding of what we just discussed. Donald Trump is looking to sell the property he purchased 5 years ago. He wants a cap rate of 4.5% at disposition, meaning when he wants to sell his property. The projected 6th-year net operating income is $270,000. What is the disposition sale price? What's he selling it for? Or what should he sell it for? So this is also easy enough. You have the capitalization rate that he's looking for at the time of sale 5 years down the road. But he also knows what the net operating income is for year 6. So if you sell it at the end of year 5, an investor is looking for his first year of net operating income, which would be year 6. So all we'd have to do for Mr. Trump is to get the net operating income of year 6 divided by that disposition cap rate of 4.5%, and voila, we come up with the sales price. In this case, the net operating income at year 6 is $270,000. Disposition cap rate is 4.5%, and the projected sales price at year 5 would be $6 million. What we just talked about was from a 10,000-foot view. Let's delve in a little closer to gain a better understanding of the direct capitalization approach. To do this, we need to understand where the NOI or the net operating income comes from. So let's look at how the NOI is derived. We start with the potential income, which is basically the gross income that we receive. But we have to subtract vacancy and credit losses, and that would give us our effective rental income. Then we have to add other incomes, like such as if you have communication towers on the roof and you're getting rents from that. Maybe you're getting rent from laundry or what have you. Any other type of additional income you add to that, and you would come up with your gross operating income, or the GOI. Now that you have that, you have to subtract all your expenses, because obviously every building has expenses. And once you subtract the operating expenses, you come up with the net operating income. Notice we haven't even touched depreciation or financing, the interest rate that you're paying, or the taxes that you're paying for the building. So it is missing a number of things. That's why at the beginning of our session, I alluded to a quick and dirty method of evaluating commercial investments, strictly because it is not considering depreciation, financing, or tax rate. Direct capitalization method does not consider any of those. But it does take into effect your vacancy and credit losses, other incomes and collectibles, and your operating expenses. But it's not very accurate because it is missing a huge portion of what needs to be considered for investment purposes. And that is, again, depreciation, financing, and taxes. Fact or fiction? Your cap rate is the same as your internal rate of return. Is it? I guess you can say sometimes, but when is that sometimes? Let's delve into it a little more to get a better understanding. And there is nothing better than doing an example or a scenario. For scenario 1, we will look at 3 investments to compare. In this example, as you see, investment 1, the purchase price is $1 million. Is the same for investment 2, purchase price is $1 million. Same for investment 3, the purchase price is $1 million. However, the NOI, or the net operating income of the first year, is $150,000 for investment 1, $100,000 for investment 2, and $50,000 for investment 3. All the net operating incomes for the 3 different investments are different. And also the sales price is different. For investment 1, it's $950,000. Investment 2 is $1 million. And investment 3 is $1,050,000. And when you run the numbers, you find out that the internal rate of return for all these 3 examples of the 3 investments are the same at 10%. The internal rate of return, or the IRR, of investment 1 is 10%, the IRR of investment 2 is 10%, and the IRR of investment 3 is 10%. This is because although we bought all of them for the same price, investment 1 has a larger net operating income but a lower sales price, which would result in a 10% internal rate of return. Investment 2 also has a $1 million purchase price and $1 million sales price, but the net operating income is lower than investment 1, which would result in an IRR of 10% as well. For investment 3, again, the purchase price is $1 million, but the sales price is $1,050,000. However, the net operating income is $50,000, which is lower than the other 2 investments. And this also results in an internal rate of return of 10%. So if you were looking strictly from an internal rate of return perspective, they're all the same. But let's look at their cap rate or capitalization rate. And remember that the cap rate was the NOI of the first year divided by the purchase price. When we run the numbers, we see that for investment 1, the cap rate is 15%. For investment 2, the cap rate is 10%. And for investment 3, the cap rate is 5%. What can we conclude from this? Easy enough. Cap rate and IRR are equal only when purchase price and sale price are equal. That is in the middle quadrant here. This means that you've had no growth. If you have no growth, no appreciation, then your internal rate of return and the cap rate would be the same. For investment 1, the sales price was lower than the purchase price. So we had basically not an appreciation, but think of it as a depreciation of your investment. Therefore, when the sales price is less than the purchase price, your cap rate would be more than your internal rate of return. As we see for investment 1, the cap rate is 15% and the internal rate of return is 10%. As we see for investment 1, the purchase price is more than the sales price, or the sales price is less than the purchase price, which means there was a depreciation here of your investment. And therefore, in that case, your cap rate would be more than your internal rate of return. By the same token, for investment 3, your purchase price is less than your sale price, or your sale price is more than your purchase price. That means you've had an appreciation. In this scenario, your cap rate is less than your internal rate of return. So going back to the quadrant, if your sales price is the same as your purchase price, that means you've had no appreciation, no growth. So therefore, your cap rate and your yield or your internal rate of return would be equal. If your sales price is less than your purchase price, then your cap rate is going to be greater than your internal rate of return or yield. And if your sales price is greater than the purchase price, then your cap rate will be less than the internal rate of return or yield. So in summary, all 3 investments have the same internal rate of return, but because of the sale price, each would have a different capitalization rate or cap rate. Investment 1, the cap rate would be higher than the IRR because the sale price is lower than the purchase price. In investment 2, cap rate and the IRR or your yield are the same because purchase price and the sale price are the same. For investment 3, cap rate is lower than the internal rate of return because your purchase price is lower than the sale price, or your sale price is higher than the purchase price. So then, what's the relationship between the cap rate and the IRR or the yield? At the beginning, I alluded to growth, and that's exactly the missing link between them. So we start with the cap rate, and we add the growth rate, and that's what gives us our yield or the internal rate of return. Without that growth rate, our internal rate of return would be the same as our cap rate. So in conclusion, we were able to determine investment value through direct capitalization method or the cap rate. We were able to come up with future sale price using that direct capitalization method. And we looked at some of the plus and minuses of direct capitalization method. And then we explored the relationship between the cap rate and the yield or IRR, internal rate of return. Thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, please send me an email to the following link and I will get back to you.